All right, before we do something with onion skin, this one looks pretty much done. You can see that it's got animated elements all over the place and it loops seamlessly. Now this is vital. It has to loop seamlessly. That's a big part of this one. So if you think it looks good, except it like ends up in some weird place and then it jumps back. So if like this were the end and then it snapped back, then it went through and then it's not back, that's not seamless. Make this one seamless. Now it's seamless. We're at the right frame rate for this assignment, so it's time to go ahead and save this out so that we can turn it in. Now keep in mind that this week I'm going to want two files. I'm going to want this Photoshop document turned into the assignments, but I'm also going to want the GIF, so you'll need to upload both of those. And do check to make sure that I'm not requiring you to post anything this week to the assignments. As you've noticed, to the assignments discussion, you'll notice that as we get closer to the end of the semester, I'm requiring that more and more. This could be one of those weeks, so do check in on that. Now, that said, let's take a look. Now, remember, when we bring up the render window, we have the ability to do image sequences or the media encoder. And under the media encoder, we have some options, but none of those are GIFs. What we need to do is actually do something a little bit different, and that's an export and a save for web legacy. So first things first, I'm going to save to make sure that everything's good to go. And now I'm going to go to File. And I'm not going to try to save as and save a GIF. I'm going to go to export and notice that we have the option to save for web legacy. When I click that, it'll bring up this window. I'm going to do one step back though. I press cancel. You'll want to make sure that your working space encompasses everything. Sometimes you'll have been, fiddling around and you'll have a shorter working space because you've been doing some of the flyout adjustments. If you do that, you won't get everything. Make sure your working space takes up the full length of your timeline. That way everything will be good to be captured and good to be exported. All right, so I'm going to go to File and I'm going to go to Export and I'm going to Save for Web Legacy. I'll break open this little window here. You can see we've got some options, assuming that it renders in. Notice that it's so big we can't see everything. We can go over to our zoom level and zoom back in and out. Now we have our original. We have an optimized, and this will do something called dithering. That's just adding noise to try to hide certain errors that occur inside of compression. So they'll go in as a selective palette in 256 colors. And we can play to see what that looks like. Look how horrifying that is. Probably not what we want. Now we can do a 2-up or a 4-up. And that will just, there we go, show us different previews so we can do different adjustments on all of these. But we don't need to do that. I'm just going to come to original and I'm going to start adjusting this a little bit differently. So a few things. First off, looping options. You have once or forever or other, a certain number of times. This is the number of times that the GIF will loop. So you want forever, since you want it to be a looping GIF. Set this back to the beginning. Actually, I'm going to play it for a moment and stop it. Once we have everything on screen, this will be a good point for us to view what we've got going on. So I'm asking a few things. I'd like it, if possible, for you to get this below around the 5 megabyte mark. So if you have something that's like 100 megabytes, that's not right. Like this should be much smaller than that. Also, I don't want it to be this huge. It's kind of slow to play. I want it to be 960 by 540 pixels per inch. That's actually one of the reasons I had you do the 1080 HD TV. If we go to percent and we punch in 50%, that's half of the size. So right now we're getting a much smaller image straight off the bat. And pop this over to optimize real quick. And you can see that we've got diffusion, dither at 100% and all that stuff. And pop back over to original. And notice we're at 1.98 megabytes. And that's with, we can knock dither down to 0%. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Let's take a look at what's going on. I'll walk you through what all of these do. Okay, first off, we've knocked the image size down to 50%. We're using a bicubic sampling. We can try all the others, of course. Bicubic smoother if you've got a lot of gradients, but this looks okay. I'm going to, and we have some other things. We can slice this up into smaller GIFs. We don't want to do that right now. You can use the eyedropper tool to do selections. We don't need to do that right now either. You can create presets. Right now we're fine not doing that, but you can set it to like a 128 dithered GIF or a 64 no dithered GIF. What's the 64 and the 128? It's referring to how many colors you have available to you. So let's go over all these. All right. We have the different colors. We have perceptual, which tries to figure out the colors that, well, let me just bring up the Adobe manual real quick and we can go over what each of these are: perceptual, selective, adaptive, and restrictive. Notice also we have a color number: 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and 256. That's what it means with a GIF of 64 or 128. They're just talking about the number of colors. All right, let's check the manual real quick. Boom. Hi, Adobe. You have perceptual. This creates a custom color table by giving priority to colors for which the human eye has a greater sensitivity. That sounds pretty useful and generally is. Selective creates a color table similar to the perceptual color table, but will favor broad areas of color and preservations of web colors. In other words, web safe colors are colors that should always reproduce. That's not really the case in this day and age. It's not something we have to worry about that much. This color table usually produces images with the greatest color integrity. Selective is the default option, so that probably is a bit better than perceptual. Adaptive creates a custom color table by sampling colors from the predominant spectrum in the image. In other words, if you have a lot of greens in it, it will try to preserve more greens. Oh, well, notice they say the exact same thing, don't they? For example, an image with the color green and blue produces a color table primarily of green and blue. Most images concentrate colors in particular areas of the spectrum. So in other words, a pink image will have mostly pink. Restrictive web uses the standard 216 color table common to the Windows and Mac OS 8-bit, that's 256 colors, palette. This option ensures that no browser dither is applied to color when the image is displayed using 8-bit color. This palette is also called the Web Safe palette. Using the web palette can create larger files and is recommended only to avoid browser dithering as high priority. You should always avoid dithering. We have so much throughput these days that it's ridiculous to use dithering. Don't use dithering. Custom uses a color palette that's created or modified by the user. If you open an existing GIF or Ping8 file, it will have a custom palette. Note, use the color table palette in the Save for Web and Devices dialog to customize the color lookup table. Well, we're not going to do that. We're also not going to use black and white grayscale. Guess what that is? It's black and white and grayscale. While we're in here, by the way, this is the better version of dithering than me saying it's basic noise. Dithering determines the method and amount of application of dithering. Dithering refers to the method of simulating color not available in the color display system of your computer. A higher dithering percentage creates the appearance of more colors and more detail in an image, but also increases the filing size. For optimal compression, the lowest percentage of dither that provides the color detail you require. Images with primarily solid colors may work well with no dither. Images with continuous tone, especially color gradients, may require dithering to prevent color banding. So supposedly, this is the thing though, in some versions of Photoshop, that dither, that noise will be bad. But if you're getting this kind of banding, then yeah, you gotta dither. So you'll need to add that in. You have some dither methods. Diffusion, it will be a random pattern that's usually less noticeable. I don't know, older versions of Photoshop has a bad pattern by general. And so testing on the new ones could be fine. A lot of ones you dither, it will look just as bad as it being banded. The dither effects are diffused across the adjacent pixels. Pattern applies a half-tone like square pattern to simulate colors not in the color table. Noise applies a random noise pattern similar to the diffusion dither method, but without diffusing the pattern across adjacent pixels. No seam appears in the noise dither method. So essentially more random than the diffusion. All right, you have transparency and matte. We don't have any of those, but you know what? I'll let you guys go ahead and read through all of this good stuff if you so like. I will post it up to the Adobe. I'll post this to our discussions, and you can read through it as you need. I don't think you need me to read an entire manual to you. Sufficient to say the transparency matte determines how transparent the pixels are during the optimization. We're not doing any transparency, so we don't need to worry about any of that. This manual has some great little demonstrations on these. And I think you'll really enjoy the knowledge, the benefits of the knowledge of having read this. So that said, let's take a look back at our Photoshop. Let's do a couple of things. We don't have any transparency. We don't have to worry about that. Notice dither 100%. Well, you know what? In the current version, diffusion actually looks pretty well. Let's try the noise. They've improved this. Older versions of Photoshop, dither would look bad. I'm actually tempted to recommend dithering now. Oh, that's a pleasant surprise. Frequently, dithering looks absolutely terrible, but hey, that's great. And it had a very small effect on our file size, so I'm not going to worry about that. All right, so we have perceptual. We also have adaptive. Be the most likely to go. Adaptive, I think, looks absolutely fine. I think perceptual is about just as good. Selective's also fine. In our case, any of these will work. I'm going to stick with adaptive. I think that'll be good. Web snap. The more you do this, the more it will try to snap the colors to web base, and that will just make it look terrible. Am I actually looking at the optimized version, or am I still on the original? I think I was still on the original. Let's go ahead. So now here we go. If we do web snap, we should see the preview. I'm sorry, I didn't realize it's still in the original tab. So that might explain why dithering also looked great. Let's take one look at the dithering. Let's do pattern. You know what? No, it's still surprisingly good. Let's do the diffusion dithering. Still pretty good. Yeah, that's all right. We don't have any transparency, so I'm going to turn that off. Interlacing, it's just the way that it renders it out, line by line instead. Yeah, it's looking okay. All right, let's take a look at perceptual now. I think that adaptive is the better one, so we'll stick with that. I think we need to convert it to sRGB. Okay, so that looks good. I don't need any metadata. You can put in your copyright info if you want, but that's just more garbage stuck inside your GIF, so I'm just going to ditch that. Here's our color table, 50%. Bicubic, we could do bicubic smoother if we wanted to try to have a smoother gradation. I'm not really seeing a big difference, so I don't think it really matters in our case. Loop forever. And let's save. Oh, out of paranoia, I always go back to the first frame before I save. We've got some annoying warning size. This will be saved without copyright info. That's fine. All right, let's save. It'll ask me where I want to save it, so I'm just going to navigate over to the week 11 demo, and we'll save this. And then we'll pop over to the week 11 demo, and we'll open this up. Look at that. We have successfully saved a GIF. Now this is ready to be turned in along with the PSD. So good for us. Now from here, I'd like to show you how to do some onion skinning. So we'll deal with that next. All right, I'll catch you on the next video.